There are places on this earth where humans were born, but surviving as a human was the hardest thing of all. Today we are going to that terrifying land where around 20,000 to 30,000 years ago, humans hunted, and hunting did not just mean food. Hunting meant one thing: survive today or disappear forever. Today we are talking about Kenya, a place where a single mistake was the final mistake. And remember, are you ready to follow the shadow of history? Subscribe and stay with us on this journey of fear, courage, and survival. Because if they had not survived there, none of us would be here today. Early humans in Kenya. Settlement and living. The first condition for survival in this brutal land was simple. Where will you sleep tonight? Because in Kenya, sleep did not mean rest. Sleep meant, will you see the next morning? Or will you never open your eyes again? Kenya was not just beautiful grassland. This land was a silent predator. Open savannas, rocky hills, dark caves, dry riverbeds, and sudden stretches of jungle where once you entered, you might never come back. People did not live here in comfort. They lived with intelligence, fear, and the constant shadow of death. 20,000 to 30,000 years ago, people in this region never lived alone because they knew isolation meant death. A single human, no matter how strong, could not survive here alone. So they lived in small groups, 5 people, 10 people, sometimes 20. This group was their family. This group was their shield. This group was their entire world. Without the group, they were nothing. And if the group broke, everything ended. At that time, the world was not made for humans. This land belonged to predators. Humans were not rulers.
Humans were targets. They did not build cities. They did not know permanent homes. They only knew one thing: how to survive the night. They lived on slopes, on higher ground, where they could see far into the distance. Below lay a sea of grass, and within that grass, death moved silently. Rivers were life, but rivers were also a curse. During the day, humans came for water. At night, the same place belonged to lions and crocodiles. One delay, one sound, one wrong step, then only bones. Caves were not always available, and even when found, they were never permanent. So humans built temporary shelters: wood, branches, grass, animal skins. These shelters shook in the wind, soaked in rain, but if they could protect them for one night, that was success. At the center burned fire. If the fire went out, these people vanished, because without fire, night meant death. Darkness meant being hunted. Fire was the only wall between humans and beasts. When night fell, the land became unrecognizable. Movement in the grass, hyenas calling in the distance, sudden roars of lions. Each sound was a warning. Each sound was a countdown. No one slept deeply. Someone was always awake, spear in hand, eyes fixed on the darkness. Because if one person died, the entire group weakened. Humans never stayed alone. Being alone meant turning yourself into food. The group meant strength. The group meant survival. This was how humans avoided becoming prey. No place was permanent. Where fire burned today, it could disappear tomorrow. Drought, floods, animal migrations, other human groups, everything arrived without warning. So humans were always ready to leave everything behind. And this is how, around 20,000 years ago, in this brutal land of Kenya, humans learned to control fear, to turn fire into a weapon, and to turn the group into family. Because those who could not adapt did not just die, they never truly became human. They disappeared into the darkness of history.
Birth and childhood in early Kenya. From approximately 28,000 to 18,000 BCE, this region of East Africa, modern-day Kenya, was passing through one of the harshest phases of the Ice Age. The climate was unstable. Droughts, cold nights, and the presence of large predators defined human limits. In this environment, childbirth was a biological event, but socially, it was a risk. A child meant more mouths to feed, slower movement, and increased danger for the group.
For this reason, around 18,000 BCE, births were rare and cautious. There were no celebrations, because sound itself was dangerous. Archaeological evidence shows these settlements were temporary. Mothers gave birth inside caves or in the most protected area of the camp. There was no medical care. Childbirth depended entirely on the mother's strength and environmental conditions. Infant and maternal mortality was extremely high. This was not an exception, it was normal. After birth, the child was kept at the center of the group, the safest zone. Children were the most vulnerable members. At night, crying was controlled immediately, because in 18,000 BCE Africa, sound meant danger. There was no formal education. Children learned by watching and copying. They learned which sounds meant danger, which movements triggered migration, which situations demanded silence. There was no written language. Knowledge lived in memory. Mistakes had immediate consequences. Childhood was short. Many children became functional members early. Around 18,000 BCE, humans were not at the top of the food chain. They were a fragile but adaptive species, surviving only by understanding their environment. Clothing and body protection in early Kenya. Near the end of the Ice Age, this region posed extreme challenges. Around 20,000 years ago, as the sun set, temperatures dropped fast. Night turned the land dry, empty, and cold, around 5 to 10 degrees Celsius. For children, elders, and the injured, one night was enough to die. Humans understood, without body protection, survival was impossible. Cold drained energy. Less energy meant slower reactions. Slow reactions meant vulnerability. There were no metals, no woven fabrics, only animal skins. Skins protected from cold, reduced noise while moving, and made humans less visible during hunts. By 18,000 BCE, this simple covering was survival itself. It soaked in rain, cold wind passed through, but there was no alternative. Those without protection shivered at night, lost strength by day. Lost strength meant failed hunts. Failure meant danger for the group. This was not comfort, not identity. It was another night survived. Weapon making in early Kenya. Survival depended on weapons. There was no metal, only stone, wood, and bone. The first step was stone selection. Not every stone worked. They searched for stones that fractured into sharp edges, often near rivers or hills. Flint was common. Using another stone, they struck at precise angles. This technique, known today as stone knapping, created blades, knives, and spearheads. Experience mattered. One mistake ruined the stone. Spears were critical. Shafts came from strong wood. Tips were hardened with fire. Stone or bone was inserted into grooves and tied with animal hide or vines. Weak bindings meant death. Bones and horns were also shaped into hooks, piercing tools, and needles. There were no manuals. Knowledge passed by observation. Weapons were group property. Those who made them were vital. Weapons did not make humans invincible. They only gave them a chance. How early humans hunted. Kenya. Hunting was not sudden attack. It was silence and calculation. Humans watched first. Separated animals, injured ones, slow breathers. Choosing wrong meant death. They moved with grass height, shadows, wind. Scent meant failure. Spears were thrown from far away. Close meant crushed. Targets were shoulders, ribs, thighs. Many spear tips were coated with poison from toxic plant bark and resin. The poison weakened slowly. Humans did not chase, they followed. Blood, tracks, broken grass. When movement slowed, the final strike came. Even then, danger remained. Predators gathered. Only after securing the area did butchering begin. Organs removed first, meat roasted if fire existed, otherwise eaten raw. Someone ate, someone watched. Bones were cracked for marrow, nothing wasted. Then they moved. This was not celebration, this was necessity. Not a story of bravery, but of precision.
Final segment, human struggle and reflection. Around 22,000 years ago, here in this land, life was constant struggle. Children shivered, mothers prayed. One sound, one delay, one mistake. Today, we walk roads with lights. Once, people sat silently around fire. Can you imagine that night? That cold? That fear? Today's comfort was once impossible. Those who failed vanished. No names, no stories, only silence. This was the beginning. This was humanity, 20,000 years ago. Now the question is yours. Can you truly understand how brutal those silent nights were?